I'm Chloe Howry, just back from second breakfast with another episode of Musings of a Shire Girl. On today's episode, we are interviewing our second Middle-earth expert who specializes in his knowledge of the Silmarillion. This is part 2 of the 3-part series comparing Gandalf and Christ. Alright, today I'm here with my uncle, Mr. Zach Howry, and we're going to just interview him on comparing Gandalf and Christ. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Zachary Howry. I am the 37-year-old uncle of Chloe Howry and all her siblings. I have read The Lord of the Rings many times. I have also read The Hobbit and The Silmarillion, and I have watched all the movies, good or bad, however you like them. I love The Lord of the Rings story, its world, and its history. And I bet I have beaten Chloe's dad at Lord of the Rings Risk, although he might say differently.
All right, let's dive in. What is the main purpose of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings?
The main purpose, I think, of Gandalf, and he has a lot of smaller purposes, is when Middle-earth was first made, it was made by it was ruled over by what were called the Valar. They were like the gods of Middle-earth and really beyond Middle-earth, the whole world. And there was one of the Valar named Morgoth who was evil and wanted to rule all others. And he established his kingdom in Middle-earth, in Thorin's Ruin, I want to say, or something similar to that is where his castle was. And he waged war during the entire First Age with the elves and the dwarves. Not so much men, but men also when they came along. And he was winning. He was able to utilize his power over creatures and the orcs and goblins, and was able to overcome the kingdoms of the elves and the dwarves and the men. And so the Valar were looking to try to give some relief, give some assistance to the peoples of Middle-earth. So they sent what were called the Istari, were almost like an angelic type of being or a powerful creature. And they sent 5 of these into Middle-earth to help guide, protect, and really bring some relief through their powers, their abilities that they were going to have. Gandalf was one of them. Sauron was one of them. Radagast was one of them. And there were 2 others that never got named, but there were 5 of them that were sent really with a purpose to help save Middle-earth from the evil of Morgoth.
What are the similarities between Gandalf and Christ?
So similarities between Gandalf and Christ, I think you could probably spend a lot of time pulling out a lot of them if you dived into it. I think right off the bat, what I just said, Jesus was sent by God with a purpose to come to earth to save people from their sin. And why did he have to do that? Because Satan, which this is another interesting parallel, is Satan was an angelic being, Lucifer, but he chose to rebel against God and was cast out of heaven. And he has waged war against mankind ever since. And he caused the fall of man, or I guess with his temptation of Eve and Adam in the garden. And he's been at war with Christ's followers ever since. And mankind lost initially that battle. And all of Christ's or God's perfect creation was put in a chains of darkness, darkness to sin, and we couldn't overcome it. Man can't overcome that sin. So Jesus had to come to this world to provide the salvation for our sin and bring us out of darkness. In that same way, in a similar way, Gandalf was sent to Earth, sent to Middle-earth to help bring the people out of the darkness of Morgoth, who was one of the powerful Valar, but chose selfishly to rebel against all the others and was thrown out of the kingdom where they were and sent to Middle Earth, where he then waged war against mankind. So I think that's the first big similarity between Gandalf and Christ. Another one more specific, like in a smaller circumstance, is when Gandalf and the company in the Fellowship of the Ring were going through the mines of Moria in the ancient dwarven kingdom of Khazad-dûm to go under the Misty Mountains, and they came across a Balrog, an ancient evil winged demon with a cord of fire, and the Balrog was blocking their path. And Gandalf chose to stand in front of the Balrog to fight against it and was thrown down with it. But in throwing down his life, he was able to save the lives of his friends, to save the lives of his company. And all thought Gandalf was lost. He fell into, it was actually quite a battle as he fell down with the Balrog. And later on in the Two Towers, when they thought Gandalf had died, he actually appears back, kind of changed. He was Gandalf the Grey. He wore kind of shabby, tattered clothes, but when they saw him again, he was now Gandalf the White, and he wore bright white robes, and he shined forth a light when his friends saw him again later on. And so it was almost like a rebirth, which is a parallel to Christ's resurrection. So I think those two. And then a third thing I would say is Gandalf really had a way of going about finding people to send on missions, to send on tasks. He did it with Thorin Oakenshield in The Hobbit, where he had a task that he wanted accomplished, and he sent Thorin on that. Or with Frodo Baggins or Bilbo Baggins with the Hobbits, or Aragorn, where Gandalf wanted him to reclaim his title as king of Gondor. So Gandalf used people to accomplish purposes that he thought that he wanted them to, that he wanted to see them accomplish. And I think Jesus does the same thing with us. He has missions that he calls us to. He calls us to be to be his followers. Just like Gandalf went around collecting his dwarves and his hobbits and the people of his fellowship or his company, Jesus called his first disciples. And another cool thing, Gandalf, when he went out to choose his followers, he liked to go pick those hobbits who would otherwise be overlooked. People probably wouldn't have thought much of them. They were, it was really the Shire was almost not known beyond it by anyone else in the Middle Earth. And Jesus certainly calls those who the world would otherwise overlook. He doesn't call us because of our height, our ability to fight or carry weapons, or and maybe in our world's case, our popularity, our wealth, our prestige, our status. But he calls those of all humble backgrounds to be followers of him. So those quite a few, I think, similarities between Gandalf and Jesus.
What are the differences between Gandalf and Jesus?
Well, I think in the biggest sense, Jesus is God. Jesus is equal to God the Father. So that right there is a big difference that shouldn't be overlooked. I think we got to be, Gandalf is a wonderful character, but he certainly is not the character of God. And he's a created being, even in the world of Middle Earth that Tolkien created. He is more of an angelic type messenger with special powers, but he's not God. And he doesn't single-handedly save the world. Jesus saved the world from the only thing that can really defeat us, which is sin and death. Whereas Gandalf played a big part in saving the world. He really, even at the end of the day, was just part of the story. He didn't accomplish it all under his own thought or his own purposes, but played a part in that story. And he's limited even in the character. He's not all knowing. He's not all powerful. He is captured. He is weakened. He is worried about things he can't control. So certainly he has limitations that Jesus does not. So I would say.
Where in the story is it easiest to see how Gandalf can relate to Jesus?
Um, I think the two that when you read the stories that just jump out to you are, I think the first one that jumps out to you, especially if you watch the movies, is the fight with the Balrog and the rebirth with almost a new body and a new power, almost like a glorified sense. Gandalf comes back after defeating the Balrog, and reveals himself almost as Jesus after his death, burial, and then he's resurrected, and he reveals himself to his friends, and they're astounded when they see him. I think that is probably the strongest way that people like, oh, that's a Jesus kind of character that's been created here or is in this story. But for me, since I've read the Silmarillion, and have that bigger picture of the Middle Earth lore or history, is how he was sent to Earth with a mission to help protect and save the world. I think Jesus certainly being sent to this Earth to save the world is a great similarity that's easy to spot, especially when you see the story of Morgoth, the fallen angel who wages war against mankind, matches that of Lucifer, fallen from heaven, and God promised that there would be someone who comes to crush the serpent's head, which is Jesus. And then later on, the Valar send the Ishtari to hopefully try to crush or help crush Morgoth, and then later on Sauron.
Um, what can we learn from Gandalf?
Well, if anyone has seen the movies or watched the books, Gandalf has a wonderful sense of humor, and he's a wonderful character that certainly will be one of your favorite characters in the story. But he has a true sense of caring for people. There's several times where Gandalf gives monologues or little side notes of how he personally feels, and he really does care about the beautiful things or the good things of Middle Earth. He loves the Shire because the people are, they're peaceful, they're kind, they care about each other, they're brave, they're honest, and Gandalf likes those things. He's himself brave and courageous. He leads battles. He leads armies. He's clever. There is a lot that you're going to like about Gandalf if you get into the stories.
All right. Well, um, thank you for letting me interview today.
Thank you for the interview. That was a lot of fun.